All right, we ready, Tyler? All right. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and the zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear and make decisions on requests for variances and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, to review conditional use permit requests, and to consider appeals from any decision of city staff in the administration of the zoning ordinance. The members of this board are citizens of the City of Des Moines and have been appointed to this board by the City Council. The board members are volunteers and receive no compensation for their public service. I'm going to take a moment here and introduce our board members. On the audience's right is Tom DeCio. Next to him is Rhonda Cedillo. I'm Mel Pins, the board chair. On my right is Marlis Jones, and next to her is Justin Gross. This is a 7-member board. We have 5 members present today, and I'm going to come back to that in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our city staff who will be assisting us today. First and foremost, the Zoning Board of Adjustment's legal counsel is Gary Guidelock to my left. For city staff that will be assisting in giving presentations, answering questions, Frank Dunn-Young, Senior City Planner, Bert Dross, the Deputy Planning Administrator, Shreyosi Chakrabarti, City Planner, and Eric Lundy, Zoning Enforcement Officer for the city. Tyler Hall is our meeting moderator. I'll cover the meeting's procedure here. For some of you, this may be the first time that you're in front of us at this board. You may hope that it's the only time you're in front of us, but we'll try to take everybody through the process here, so if you haven't done this before, don't worry. We will work you through this. First of all, the Board of Adjustment is a quasi-legal board. This hearing will be conducted within the procedures and format as authorized by Iowa law and the city's ordinances. The meeting is open to the public, but the meeting is being recorded by both audio and video for a legal record of these proceedings. The board members have each received a copy of the agenda and the staff recommendations. The board is required to base its decision in each case upon the criteria established by law for the type of relief sought by the applicant. The law applicable to each case has been identified in the written staff report. If the facts, as determined by this board, demonstrates that the criteria for granting the relief has been satisfied, then the board must grant the relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the requested relief. Each item will be announced in the order that it appears on the agenda. Items listed on the consent portion of this agenda are not planned to be individually discussed. In fact, they'll be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless the appellant does not agree to the conditions recommended by the staff, or if there's an individual in this audience or a member of the board that requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda so that a full discussion on the matter can occur before a decision is made. For the general, and I'll come back to that consent agenda here in a minute. For our regular agenda, after an item has been announced, city staff will first give a brief overview of the appeal, and they will present any written comments that have been received prior to the hearing. Then the applicant or their representative will be allowed up to 10 minutes to present their appeal. We'll then move to the public comment portion of the hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak in support of, in opposition to, or even in neutrality of an appeal will be allowed up to 5 minutes each to present their comments. This will be their one and only opportunity to address the board in relation to that item. Once all concerned citizens have spoken, the board will then ask any additional questions of city staff. Finally, the applicant will be given up to 3 more minutes for a rebuttal or other closing comments if they so desire. All speakers are requested to speak only from the podium here at the front center of the room by where the laptop's up there on the podium. You must give first both your name and address of business or residence as appropriate for your presence here. In the event, you may need to be contacted for legal notices related to the outcome of this appeal. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law has been satisfied. Speakers are asked to ensure they're respectful of time considerations, and if necessary, the board chair will limit further comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. After all comments have been received, the board will then close any further public comment on the agenda item at hand, and the board will immediately deliberate the request, and we will make a decision here today on the appeal. Please note that it takes at least 4 affirmative votes for any zoning appeal to gain approval. I'm going to take a moment to comment on that. We're a 7-member board. There are 5 board members present today. It always takes at least 4 board members to approve any appeal. So basically, you got to get 4 out of the 5 of us to agree to approve your appeal. With only 5 board members present, if you feel that's maybe not enough of an audience here to consider your appeal for approval, you can request that this hearing item be continued to next month. Basically, it's going to set you back a month, but if you feel like you have a good case and you're following the reasoning of how we would grant an appeal, you can give it your best shot. But you either got your chance today, or you can ask to be moved to next month. Next month, somebody could have a broken leg, get hit by a bus, I don't know. So with 7 members, I can never guarantee that there will be 7 members here, but there must always be 4 to have quorum for a hearing. So when we get to your agenda item, as we go over those, if you feel like, again, you'd like to look at going to next month, we'll consider that. In closing, on background here, if your appeal is approved by the board today, we ask that you please wait until about 1 week from today's hearing to contact the city's Permit and Development Center if you would need to obtain any necessary building or sign permits related to your appeal. This will allow the decision of the board to be documented in the form of a decision and order. That decision and order will be provided to you as well as city staff for the record. Any appeal that is approved by the board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of decision by this board, or that approval shall expire. The decisions made by this board can only be appealed in the Iowa District Court. So if you feel you've been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the district court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the city council to change those regulations for future considerations. All material written or otherwise used today as part of any presentation is part of the permanent record. So if you have not already provided copies of your presentation materials to staff, you'll need to do that. You may contact city staff after the hearing if you'd like a copy of anything presented today. Finally, some quick housekeeping items. We ask that you avoid any undue conversation in the audience so as to limit distractions during the hearing. You're doing a fine job on that. Also, please ensure your cell phone has been silenced. And if you need to use a restroom, just go right back through these doors. You don't have to go back downstairs. Walk past the staircase and there's restrooms on your left. Based on the agenda, if we need to, we will take about a 5-minute break around 3 or 3:30 if that might be needed. So, going back to the agenda, I'm going to get back to Frank here. Frank, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Frank Dunn, Senior Planning with the City of Des Moines. We do have a request for item 4, 1623 6th Avenue, be continued until next month for an opportunity to have a discussion with neighbors regarding concerns.
Okay. And would the applicant be in agreement with that? Just nod your head. Okay. All right. All right. So we've got a request to continue that item until the next regularly scheduled hearing. That's item 4 at 1623 6th Avenue. So board members, there's been a request to continue that. The applicant's in agreement with that. Unless there's any real basic questions, would there be a motion to continue that to the next hearing? Moved by Tom, second by Rhonda. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, all right, motion carries 5-0. Okay, all right. Oh, quit messing with me. Okay, all right, so now, before let's see, we have consent agenda. And on consent agenda, again, the city staff is recommending approval of these items, so we are not planning on hearing those directly. So unless there's a member of this audience that requests we hear the item directly, we would be voting for approval. And unless there's a member of this board that wants the item heard, we would also consider it as part of consent agenda for approval. So what I'm going to do here is just read the item. Item 1 is a Item 1 is a ratification of a decision in order. There's really nothing to do there besides just a real quick review on that. That was from last month, and I think everybody was agreeable to some terms that the board wanted to put on continuing the conditional use permit for operation of a tavern, but we wanted to see some modifications and make sure that both the applicant and staff were on the same page. So, Frank, could you give us a quick summary of what some of those key items were that we wanted in that decision in order?
There were 4 items in particular. The first item was allowance of a bar use under the revised conditional use for a probationary period of 12 months, after which they shall return to the board for reconsideration at the April 2023 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting in order to allow the use to continue. There was also a desire for the previously granted 72 square foot patio area to be rescinded from conditional use. No outdoor activity related to the business allowed without further amendment by the Board of Adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
The third would be the business shall operate between the hours of 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. midnight each day. And then the north back door to the premise shall operate and contain signage as an emergency exit and staff entrance only. This door shall remain closed during hours of operation. The remainder of the conditions were applicable and continued when this came in 2008 and continue to be applicable today.
Okay.
I'll scroll through those.
Yeah, and Frank's just giving this to us as a review, so we don't really have, there's nothing we need to hear, no testimony to take, but the board just wanted this brought back so we could make sure we were clear what was in that decision in order that was kind of congruent with what our decision-making was. So unless anybody has any questions for Frank or any other concerns, would there
Mr.
be...
Chair, I just have
yeah,
which
go
one
ahead.
thing about that door that
Sure.
was discussed.
Yep.
And just clarification, so it means closed, it doesn't mean, I know there was some discussion about whether it can be locked on the outside so people can't come in, but it can go out.
Correct. And so the intention would be for that door to not be used by patrons at all, and only in the event that it were to be an emergency exit. And so it would remain closed unless they're getting a service delivery through that door.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's probably a fine line there. I think our intention was clear on that, but, well, how do they sign it? What kind of plate marker do they put on it? I think we'll have to just, staff can help them understand what the intent was, and hopefully they'll carry that out to the nth degree for
Great.
us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm on the same page too, Justin, on that one. Okay, any other questions or anything with the review of the decision in order as presented? If not, would there be a motion to grant approval on that one? Okay, motion by Marlis, second by Rhonda. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Aye. All right, that passes 5-0. Okay, all right. I know that was kind of on consent, but we wanted to go over that in a little more detail, so thanks for the allowance on that. Okay, we have a couple other items on consent, or one other item on consent here. And that is a type 2 zoning exception in the vicinity of 929 3rd Street related to signage. We won't plan to review that directly unless, is there anyone in the audience who would be opposed to the board granting the requested Type 2 zoning exceptions? If anybody's opposed to that, just raise your right hand. If you're not opposed to it, then we'll consider that there are no concerns. Seeing none. Any questions or concerns from the board on item 2?
Chair, I'll move item 2.
Okay. All right. So we'll be moving item 2, which is the remainder of the consent agenda for approval. Motion by Justin, second by Marlis. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
All right. That motion carries 5-0. Okay. So if you were here for item 2, that has been completed. You'll get your copy of decision and order next week. All right. That'll bring us to item 3. The vicinity of 833 Fifth Avenue, a Type 2 zoning exception generally related to Polk County and Veterans Auditorium.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Shreyavshi Chakraborty, City Planning staff. I'm here to give you a report on item 3, which is a request from Polk County Veterans Auditorium regarding property at the vicinity of 833 Fifth Avenue. The appellant is proposing to install a couple illuminated wall signs on the building, one on the north frontage, one on the south non-frontage. Specifically, the proposal is installation of a 684.5 square foot illuminated wall sign on the north frontage wall. Installation of the following signs attributed to the property's west frontage with a combined signage area of 825 square feet with a 13.83 by 49.5 foot, which is about 684.5 square foot illuminated sign on the south non-frontage wall, and an existing non-conforming 141.2 square foot wall sign on the west frontage wall. The applicant is seeking a few Type 2 zoning exception, and the appeals specifically are for regarding the north frontage wall, 584.5 square foot over the maximum 100 square foot of signage area, which is allowed for any wall sign in the DX2 district. Again, regarding the sign on the north frontage wall, a Type 2 zoning exception of 247.09 square foot over the maximum 437.5 square foot of signage area that is earned as a result of the lineal square foot frontage of the building. Additionally, Type 2 zoning exception, the same dimensions, basically of 584.59 square foot over the maximum 100 square foot of signage area for the south non-frontage wall, and a Type 2 zoning exception of 546.46 square feet over the maximum 138.13 square feet signage area on the west frontage that can be located on the south frontage wall. A non-frontage wall may use up to 50% of signage area earned on a frontage wall. So I'll familiarize you a little bit with the site. So the subject property is occupied by the Veterans Memorial Community Choice Credit Union Convention Center. It is located between 5th Avenue and 3rd Street, south of Crocker Street in the downtown area. It's zoned DX2 downtown district. And I'll show you a little bit more, give you a little bit more information on the proposed signage here. So this is the existing signage that's on the north frontage wall. What is being proposed is right here. And I'm going to toggle back and forth a little bit to explain what the appellant is proposing. They are proposing to replace and add to their existing illuminated wall-mounted sign on the north frontage wall and the south non-frontage wall. Half of the signage earned on the west frontage wall, where there is an existing non-conforming sign, will remain and is being applied towards the proposed signage on the south non-frontage wall. So as you can see here, if you can follow along with my cursor right here, the existing Veterans Memorial letters, the line and the Community Choice letters will stay. The Credit Union Convention Center letters will be removed. And in place of that, the big C logo is being proposed, the line and the letters Convention Center. The dimensions, as you can see, are all right here, and they add up to a total of about 685 square feet area. This is the existing non-conforming sign on the west frontage wall. This is the existing sign on the south non-frontage wall. This is exactly identical to the north frontage wall in terms of the design and dimensions. So you can see this is existing, and this is being proposed. It is similar to the north frontage wall. With that, I will move on to staff rationale as well as the staff recommendation. Since the proposed type 2 zoning exception appeals request signs that are significantly larger than the square footage of the maximum 100 square feet that's allowed for any wall sign, as well as for what can be earned based on the square footage of the building frontage, staff believes that the appellant does not satisfy the criteria for granting a type 2 zoning exceptions. Granting these appeals would not be consistent with the intended spirit and purpose of the zoning ordinance. The applicant also has not demonstrated that the requested exceptions are reasonably necessary due to any practical difficulties, where the practical difficulties related to the subject property cannot be overcome by any feasible alternate means other than the exception. So with that, staff is recommending denial of the requested appeals. Should the board be inclined to grant the appeals, staff recommends that any approval be subject to the following conditions. Any sign installed shall be in accordance with the elevations that were submitted with the application. Also, any signs shall be installed in compliance with the sign permit issued by the city's Permit and Development Center to a sign contractor licensed by the city. So with that, if you have any questions, I will be happy to take them at this time.
I don't think we have any questions. All right, Shreyoshi, you've got a lot going on here with this. So you'll certainly have to help me through some of this. But the first thing I'm going to ask you is, would you hit the left button on your microphone and punch that down a notch or two, down on the pad? Is there a control there? We're getting a little extra feedback that's just driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Unless there's another mic on, I think it's just getting some over reverb somehow.
See if I can.
And pointing it away from you won't help. I think it's more a matter of turning it down a little bit. Because if we point it away from you, then we won't hear you at all. Is there a control on that one?
I don't.
There is.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we first want to hear everybody, but yeah, we're just getting a little feedback there somehow.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. So yeah, with a little editorializing there, do we have some questions for staff? Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm trying to figure out is your rationale here, the city's rationale. It looks like in terms of the criteria, they're looking at 1 and 2 not being met. Can you explain a little more in detail why the city doesn't feel that it says due to practical difficulties related to the subject property? I mean, if you look at the the signage, it doesn't look like they're not adjusting it or modifying too much out of what it normally is there. They're adding a symbol, it looks like, is the major thing that's going on. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you give us a little more to the explanation of why the city's not agreeing to the type 2 exception?
Yes, I can provide a little bit more clarification, and I'll probably go to the appeals page here. So, you are exactly right in observing that the size and dimensions and the character of the existing signage is not very different from what is being proposed. Staff does acknowledge that. Staff's rationale primarily for denying this request is simply based on what is allowed within our code. Typically, staff will support an exception if it is 50% over the maximum of what is allowed. In all of the instances of the appeals, it is over the 50% threshold, and so given that rationale, staff is not able to support it just based on just the sheer percentage that the square footage of sign exceeds over that 50% of the minimum.
And just a follow-up question with that.
Yep.
The 50%, though, is sort of an arbitrary number, is that right? I mean, it's not set by code or any guidelines, is that right?
Yeah. What is set by code is the number that you see here in the table in your staff report, which is the 100 square foot that's allowed for any wall sign in a DX2 district, as well as what the applicant earns as a result of the building square footage. That's what's set by code. The 50% is more of an internal policy and consistency that staff has been following in order to evaluate such requests.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Shreyoshi, would you put that kind of north facade photo back up for a second? I want to ask you a question about what I'm seeing there. Yep. So I'm trying to follow here. It looks like there were 3 installations proposed, but this quilt banner sign and the make some bread sign, those look like temporary or banner signs. Are those part of this request here today?
No, those are not. Those are separate temporary signs, as you noted, and are only allowed a few times during the year.
Okay, so in essence, those were legal signs subject to administrative approval on just infrequent terms. So those aren't up for our consideration, no. And in essence, what we do see here would have complied with the ordinance at the time you took your photo.
Yes.
Okay, so that's good to know. Throw up that west facade entrance area with what I want to call the Art Deco letters. So you've got here that installation of the following signs as the proposal, but then you say an existing non-conforming sign. So they're not going to install this, it's already there, right?
It's already there.
Okay, all right. And I'm assuming that was the historic signage from Square One, like from 1957 or something. Is that right? Or from the addition, right. It just looks old, yeah. Wouldn't that be considered legal non-conforming and would not need any review, or does that total add into their other totals?
It is a legal non-conforming, but it is factored into the total signage that they earn on the west facade.
So that's why we kind of have to still account for it kind of in the here and now. Okay. And then finally, with both the north and west sides, I believe that the Board of Adjustment a number of years ago approved the existing signage, and there were probably some variances or exceptions at that time. And I don't know if that's in your staff report, and I realize this is under the current ordinance, but in scope and scale, what's already there versus what they want to add now, do you kind of show on the graphic what that difference is for kind of their, what I want to call footprints?
Are you asking about specifically the square footage? I might defer that to the applicant. I know what's being proposed It's, as you can see visually, it's very similar.
Right.
I do not have the square footage
That's
of
okay,
the existing sign.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do in my head is just, you know, of what's there now, with what they do want to install, how much bigger is that going to be? But I realize that you have to look at basically what the menu says for size of signs allowable and what they're proposing, not comparing it to how it looks now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, nicely done. Thank you. All right. Applicant or representative of the applicant, step on up. You've got up to 10 minutes to present the reasoning for your appeal, and we need you to start off with your name and address as applicable.
Lori Kemet, 733rd Street, Des Moines, Iowa. Thank you for your time today, board members. We are seeking changes to this sign clearly because Community Choice Credit Union is dropping credit union from their name altogether.
Okay.
They are our naming rights partner, and we receive a lot of revenue from them that helps us operate the venue on an annual basis. And we are just trying to change the sign to match what they are currently putting out in market. We also have a signed affidavit from the Board of Supervisors approving this change. And just to give you a little background on myself, I am the Regional Vice President of Spectra Partnerships, which is our sales arm of the venue management company Spectra that manages on behalf of Polk County. My team is responsible for all advertising, sales, and premium seating, so I actually did this deal back in 2012. And when the sign was put up, that was their main logo, and they were still using credit union. Since then, they've since changed and dropped credit union from their name. And the reason we're trying to do this is we were trying to save as much of the original sign to cut down on waste, and then also for the side of the building itself. We just went through a major tuck pointing project last year, and so we're trying to do as much as we can to be as cost effective and as less waste as we can. So that is why we are doing it, and we ask that you approve this so we can stay in conformation with our naming rights partners' branding.
All right. Questions for Lori? Justin?
Sure. Lori, if this was not granted today, is there going to be is there going to be some consequences with your partnership? Are they going to pull out? Is there anything that you know about that?
Potentially they could pull out of the agreement just because we can't fulfill our side of the agreement by making their branding, standard across their portfolio.
Okay.
And it's a significant, they are our largest partner in that venue, and a lot of the operating budget is a big chunk of that money goes to help us operate the facility. Most convention centers don't operate in the black, and we've been able to operate in the black for almost the entirety that Spectra Partnership or venue management has been with Polk County.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions for Lori? Lori, just in scope and scale with this, so I'm assuming that these were your drawings you and your sign company prepared to submit. So where it says community choice in the white, those are the existing letters, existing size. You would just be adding in the new C and the convention center below, right?
Correct, and
Okay,
the bar
all right.
to the left.
So you're kind of getting rid of credit union and whatever that had related said. Just eyeballing it, I don't really see kind of a before versus an after picture, but just eyeballing it, would you say that the overall kind of postage stamp area that it covers is about the same as what you already had? Is it?
I think so. The existing sign falls underneath Veterans Memorial. The C's would just take it outside of that, and the R on the other side would take it just out of Veterans Memorial.
I gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. So, and again, what you're doing on the north side, pretty similar to what you'd be doing on the west side. And then that, quote, night view, the only thing we see illuminated at night is what you got down there at the bottom. Is that right?
Correct, so the Cs on the side would be blue and green during the day, and they would go white
Yeah,
in the
cool.
evenings, so
Okay.
it wouldn't change the current night view as it is today.
Okay, all right, I got you. Okay, all right. Well, unless anybody else has any other questions, I think that's all we've got for the moment, so you can go ahead and sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody here who wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request? We start with supporters first. They can have up to 5 minutes. Okay, seeing none, is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? Okay, seeing none, is there anybody from Switzerland who would like to speak in neutrality on the applicant's request? Okay, seeing none, do we have any further questions for staff? Okay, all right. Based on that, then, we'd normally give you 3 minutes for a rebuttal or other closing comments, but Lori, that's up to you. Okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and close the public portion and go to board deliberation. Thoughts, ideas, impressions? Justin?
Chair and board members, I mean, I do really appreciate the city's policy. You got to have a standard. I do think, you know, in looking at the presentation and the signage, it looks like it kind of falls in line with what was previously there. So I would, I guess, be in favor of granting the type 2 exception. I mean, I think it would meet the criteria that's listed here. You know, they might be jeopardizing their partnership. I think that's, you know, that could definitely lead to some difficulties into the related subject property here. I think it falls in line with the essential character of the area. I mean, this is downtown, so I mean, you're not, you know, invading in privacy issues or neighborhood issues. So I would be in favor of granting the exception. Yeah,
Okay.
with the following conditions
Right.
added. Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a good point, Marlis. Yeah, and I think it's important on these things here, you know, Justin references, you know, we always have to go back to the criteria. We're at an exception level here. We do have to look at some practical difficulties. One thing, I'm a Des Moines native. I remember when we just had Vets Auditorium, and it was the most awesome thing in the world. And it's funny how times change, and now we have this cool Wells Fargo. We have Hy-Vee Hall, and still Veterans Community Choice Convention Center. But I tell you, when the wrestling fans come from Nowhereville, Iowa to Des Moines, and I'm honking at them on 5th and 2nd and 7th, like, where the heck are you going? They need to know where they're going. And there's so many activities down there between these 3 awesome venues. Even sometimes I will say to my wife, now, where's Bravo at? Is it Hy-Vee Halls? Is it the convention center? Where's it at? I think it's very important that we have to look at ensuring that, you know, signage provides certainly recognition, but direction. That's important to me. Where am I arriving at? I think there are some practical difficulties. This is a large complex up here. People need to kind of see where they're going. I feel this won't have an adverse impact on the essential character of the surrounding area. It's a destination convention, complex, sports, entertainment place. I need to see where I'm at. I think it fits in with that. It won't have an adverse impact because I think testimony as well as the pictures, it's about the same size as it was before. So it's not going to change anything. And again, design, construction, operation adequately, I believe, safeguards the community's interests. That's what I see here on the exceptions. I think it fits that. When I did see this on the agenda, I was curious what kind of, you know, large-scale thing are we proposing here, but pretty much you're just you're actually simplifying the name. So it actually looks less cluttered than it did before, in my opinion. So those would be my thoughts. And although I think Justin was close to a motion and close to a second, maybe, if there's some other comments, we could take those. If not, I'd be glad to have somebody entertain a motion. Okay. Justin, since you let off.
Sure, I'll second that.
Okay, all right. All right, so we got a motion by Marlis, second by Justin, to approve the requested exceptions subject to items 1 and 2. If that's clear enough for the record? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion's granted. Wait till the decision and order's out next week before you get started with anything too official down there. And thank you for coming in today. Okay, that will bring us to our next item. We did grant a continuance to item 4, so that'll be next month. So that brings us to item 5, a type 2 zoning exception at 800 Locust Street.
Right. Yes. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Ross, planning staff for the City of Des Moines. Item number 5 probably looks a little different than what you saw in your packet on Friday. The proposal hasn't changed, but the appeals needed to get there were revised ever so slightly. So what you see on the screen is a little bit different than what's in your packet, but again, the proposal is the same. And really the gist of the proposal is that they want to add a 32 square foot sign to the west facade of the existing deluxe hotel, which is located at 800 Locust Street. As I'll get to shortly, they've already been to the Board of Adjustment a few years ago to get the appeals needed to have 5 signs total on the building, and now they're wanting some more appeals in order to allow that 6th sign. So as I mentioned, the property is the Deluxe Hotel, which is at 800 Locust Street on the south side of Locust at the intersection with 8th Street. The proposed sign would actually identify the hotel's bar. So I know this is, I'll zoom in a little bit. These are the images of the existing signs. So at the northeast corner of the building, there's a projecting sign that's 10 square feet on each side. So we actually consider that to be a 20 square foot sign. And then they also have a canopy that projects from the north side of the building that has these 3 signs here. So the north side, the east side, and then the west side. And then on the west facade of the building, there's this large sign up here that would remain. And then the proposed sign is just a small 32 square foot sign that would identify the bar within the building. So where this one gets confusing is that this west wall is considered a non-frontage wall, which the code only allows a building to apply up to 50% of their signage earnings from one facade on a non-frontage wall. So when this original sign was approved, it was attributed to the north facade. But since that north facade already has 3 signs on this canopy, staff found it to be advantageous to actually apply the signage earnings to that based on the east frontage facade to allow these signs on the west facade. I know that's a mouthful. So the east facade, which has 66 feet of frontage, technically earns a total of 132 square feet of signage, which is 2 square feet of signage per lineal foot of frontage. And they're allowed to put 50% of that earning on a non-frontage wall, which means they can only put a total of 66 square feet of signage on the west wall. And again, since they only earn 2 signs per frontage, they already have 2 signs, this one at the corner and then this big deluxe. So they need that exception of 1 square feet over the allowed 2 signs as well. So now I'll go through a few photos. Again, this is that canopy that projects from the north side of the building that has 3 signs on it. This is that existing projecting sign that's at the northeast corner of the building. And this is that existing sign that's already on the west facade. And then that new sign would go generally here where my mouse is moving. And then here's just a zoomed in version of that. Then here's the dimensions. It would be 8 feet across by 4 feet tall, so it would be a total of 32 square feet. Okay. And then here's their rendering that shows how that 32 square foot sign would appear on that west facade. And then this is the decision in order from 2015, when they were given at that time it was still a variance, so they were given variance to have all of that square footage of signage on the west facade. But again, I've just mentioned that these original appeals were under the retired zoning ordinance, so what we're considering today is slightly different. As far as the staff recommendation goes, similarly to that last item, since all signage appeals have become exceptions now instead of variances, it's staff's rule of thumb that we only support up to 50% over what is allowed. And based on that 240 square foot sign that's already existing on that west facade, that already puts them way over the 50% more than the 66 square feet that's allowed on that west facade. So staff has recommended denial of those two appeals needed for the area. We recommended approval of that first appeal, which was just for one wall sign over the allowed two. But in all honesty, that appeal would be moot if these second two appeals are denied. So, like I said, staff has recommended denial just based on the fact that what they have now is way more than 50% over what would otherwise be allowed. So it's really to their benefit to just keep what they have rather than go with a 50% overage. But if the board is inclined to grant these appeals, we would recommend, similarly to that last item, that you make that approval subject to them complying with the character elevations and then obtaining the sign permits needed. We did only receive one comment card back, and that was from a condo owner here a block to the east, and they just said that they were in support. They didn't give any.
So the city didn't send in a card?
No.
Yes, I think there's some city property there to the north, is that right? Is that the city?
Yeah, it is a city parking ramp, correct.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be shady of us to
Stay neutral
stack
on
the
that
map. Right. Okay.
Okay,
All right. Did anybody have any questions for me?
yeah, go ahead, board members. Bert, I understand the idea of generally speaking what frontage is, street facing, et cetera, but related to that street, if I was to, quote, approach this building in a car from that frontage, that'd be Locust Street, right?
Right.
Is that a one-way street?
Locust is a one-way eastbound. So
It's eastbound, so if
Yeah.
I'm approaching the building on Locust, I would be approaching from the west, that is correct, heading
Correct,
east? Okay,
right.
all right, yep.
Yeah, I would also mention there is an alley right-of-way here, so
Okay.
if this lot to the west would ever develop with the building, it could
Yeah.
potentially screen some of the signage, but it couldn't be built right up to it since there's that alley there.
Yeah, it's a public right-of-way, basically?
Right,
Yeah, okay. All right. And that open lot is not affiliated with this property for use or
No.
anything?
Good.
Okay, I could ask the applicant, but yeah.
Yeah, I could see.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Anything else anybody else has? Tom?
If the bar changes hands? If they would remove the sign, then they would forfeit the appeal, since I don't believe it's a cabinet. If it was a cabinet, they could change the sign face out with just getting a sign permit without losing the appeals. But
Right.
if they had to entirely remove the sign, then it would lose its
Interesting.
non-conforming rights, and they would need to,
Even if it took 30 seconds to change it out? Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, any other questions for Bert? Okay, all right, thank you, sir. All right, applicant or representative of the applicant, step on up. We just need your name and address, and you've got up to 10 minutes.
Yeah, Carl Deacon, 800 Locust, I'll use that address as the property
Sure,
address.
yep.
Obviously, don't reside in the area, I'm in the Twin Cities now. So I'm the Director of Operations for the property. What we found with the small bar sign is it's hard to read if you're driving, if you're kind of in traffic. It's almost bad to try and read it as you're driving because it's so small and high up. So we're really trying to appeal to more traffic and get more people to see our business. As the hotel functions almost separately from the bar, they all run under the same umbrella. But if you don't know we have a bar, you don't know we have a bar. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So we really, we're trying to get awareness in the community for the fact that we actually have a wonderful bar in there. It's about it. I mean, it's a perfect place for a sign. Any questions for me?
Yeah. Questions for the board? For Carl? Go ahead, Justin.
Yes, just briefly, you mentioned about the 10 square foot sign there on the northwest corner of the building. Is that a necessary sign, I guess, do you feel?
I mean, I would argue if you said I had to take that down to have this other one, I would take it down.
You would? Okay.
Obviously, I'd rather keep it.
Right.
But if it was something I had to do to get this other sign's going to have a better impact for the
Sure,
business.
because that's where the traffic's coming,
Yeah.
and that's the direction that everyone can see. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Carl, if I wanted to drop in at your bar and I was still driving by a car, and I was booking down Locust, where would I normally be parking besides if I was lucky to get a street spot?
Well, you're going to be giving the city some money and parking in the
Okay.
Ninth and Locust parking structure.
Okay, is that the primary one that you either suggest or most patrons
Yeah, so that's
use?
where we send just about all of our customers that are driving in, we
Yep.
send them to the Ninth and Locust
Okay.
garage.
All right. Yeah, no. Right.
Yeah, so we actually, it's a surprising amount of foot traffic that we get. I think the sign would actually improve our option of getting more street traffic for the festivals and such in the Western Gateway, because right now there's really there's nothing that says come have a drink from that side of the building.
Right. Yep. Okay. All right, anything else for Carl? All right, thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation. We'll check back with you here in a minute. Okay, is there anybody who wants to speak in support of the applicant's request? Seeing none, anybody in opposition? And again, any neutral countries or parties? Seeing none. Do we have any final questions for staff? Okay, with that debate, Carl, you could have 3 minutes for closing, but if you're good, we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. Thoughts among the board? Yeah, so Marla says they have a lot of signage.
You do.
Maybe they do, but frankly, I don't see it that way. If I drive down Locust, this is one of the cleanest looking hotel frontages. I think you should certainly have your name on your canopy. If I was standing on one of those 4 street corners approaching from the northeast, aha, there's a bar. I like that little sign. That's the best way to drink downtown, is just walking around on foot. But if I haven't had a drink yet, I'm driving down Locust Street, and I would never know the bar's here. I'd be looking at the traffic light, and I would be going down to the Republic, some other place instead. So, to me, I think it makes sense to have a reasonable size sign at a reasonable scale with a reasonable view shed if I was approaching from Locust to know, hey, there's the Deluxe, because I'm very familiar with your sign on the west facade, and oh, there is a bar here. And I was looking for that bar. Gee, I better pull into the parking ramp. I don't think it's out of scope or scale. If we look, and I like Bert's presentation, and with even suggestions, some exemptions were granted, or even a variance before, I think it would have been. We are at exception level now. I'm happy for that because I think it lets the board make some better decision related to the property and area in question. And I would feel here, we do have a practical difficulty. We got a one-way street approaching this place. I don't think it's going to impact the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood, and frankly, it blends in. I don't think it would really change the character of the area with any degree of concern. But those are just my thoughts. Anyone else? Or any proposals, one way or the other? We could certainly, somebody could make a motion for denial. You guys haven't done many motions on this end today.
Yeah, well. If you really want to no. I agree, it's a lot of signs. It looks like an end cap of a supermarket. you know, and I don't know if, to me, I think it's somewhat distracting.
Push your button so you're green for anybody,
I'm
just check
sorry.
that. Yeah, yeah.
I don't agree. I think you need signage coming from that direction. And I'm like with Mel, I didn't know that that was even in there. So to me, having something that would stand out and say, hey, come on in, and the parking ramp right there, I just see it as a plus for that building and for that area. I like the signage.
If you feel like you want to say something.
No, I'm just
Okay.
torn. I'm really torn because it's not like it's a separate entity here. We're talking, it's a hotel that has a bar, right?
Yeah.
And so there's many hotels that have a bar. They don't have, the Marriott bar. You don't see signs like that. Either it's sort of intuitive that there's going to be a bar there or not. I think there was a good point brought up that would there ever be a scenario where the bar would be taken over by a different business? Maybe, I guess. I don't typically see that happening in the hotel industry, but maybe it is. I don't know. I'm just torn with the additional sign.
I kind of like the idea because if you travel and you go from any place else, being out of state or out of town, you come up to some place like the Marriott, but they have like a Bar Louie or a bar, something that indicates that there's a bar in there.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have known that this one, I wouldn't have known there was a bar in there. So I kind of like the idea of something telling me that there is. And if the name changes, that's something that they could deal with at that time. But usually the hotel has signage inside, but outside, I want to be told. I want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that, I get where Justin's coming from on that. I think each situation can be a little different. There's a lot of bars that, they got 6 stools, and for 3 hours you can get a drink with a ticket or something. Yeah, I assume in a lot of hotels there's a, quote, bar.
Right.
But this is more of a destination by itself. Every situation's different, but we have the huge Hotel Fort Des Moines. There's a restaurant bar that is, quote, attached to it. I would assume there's a restaurant bar there, but I think Proudfoot and Bird has signage, or their predecessors did. Many people go there, and they're not connected to the restaurant. I think it's a delicate balance on, is it connected or not?
Right.
I'm just going to come back to, based on scope, scale, the intent, the criteria to meet the exception request, I don't feel that it's out of sorts, and there's some practical difficulties approaching the place. So I'm going to just run something up the flagpole. We'll see where it goes. I'm going to recommend or make a motion for approval of the Type 2 zoning exception for the one wall-mounted sign as presented with conditions. It shall be constructed within the size and scope as presented by a permitted sign contractor licensed to do business in the city. So that'd be my motion. It would need a second for any consideration for a vote. Would there be a second? Okay. So we got a motion as a second to grant the requested exception subject to those basic conditions. So all those in favor of granting the exception, raise your right hand. 3, 4. Okay. Opposed? Go ahead. Okay, so I'll just take a call again for the record to clarify. Those in favor of granting the requested exception, raise your right hand. Okay, all right. So it's 5-0. So you've got it. So, so keep up the good work down there. I know it's been real tough on the hotel bar industry, but I think Des Moines is a great city and we're all bouncing back. So glad you're a part of it. We'll have your decision in order about this time next week. All right, have a good evening. All right. That brings us, I believe, to our last item on the agenda today, item 6, a Type 2 zoning exception request at 6157 Southeast 14th. And Frank's going to carry us home with this one.
All right, I'll go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit so we can see it. Okay. Item 6 proposed before us today is located at 6157 Southeast 14th Street. The applicant, Global Des Moines 1 LLC, is proposing installation of the following signs for a property within a CX-V district. They are proposing a 50.04 square foot wall-mounted sign and a 7.93 square foot projecting sign on the west occupant wall. There would be a third wall-mounted sign that is 50.31 square feet, and that would be located on the north non-frontage wall. Fourth sign that they're looking for is a monument sign of 101.20 square foot. It would be 12 foot tall, and it would set within 0 feet of along the property line along Southeast 14th Street. And so the appeals are going to be type 2 zoning exception for one sign over the maximum 2 wall signs earned for the west occupant wall. And then the second appeal would be a type 2 zoning exception for 4 feet over the maximum 8 feet of height allowed for a monument sign that is within 25 feet of the property line. To show a little bit of context, this is the site as it exists today, and so it's a large site. The site is about 19 acres, and it contains multiple commercial buildings. The applicant is proposing to develop an Olive Garden restaurant with off-street parking, and that would occur up here in the front is where they're looking to develop the Olive Garden. The property is located at the intersection of Cummins Road, and it has 2 entrances into the site, as well as there's a little bit of a frontage, that connection that occurs right there. As mentioned, the property is zoned CX-V, which is a mixed-use district. I have a couple photos of the site that I would like to share. And so this is a photo facing southeast directly into the site where you would have Olive Garden placed. And this is a photo that is facing north. And here is another photo that is facing south. The proposed monument sign would be up in this area. Obviously, the wall-mounted signs would be on the building. And I am going to show another image. This is the image of the sign that shows, here's the location of the monument sign. So as you can see, it's tucked up to the property line. It is located out of vision clearance triangles. And then the wall-mounted sign, you have 2 of them that face west. One here, and then the third sign along that would be in addition would face north is right here, and I will pull up some photo or some drawings so we can see specifically what those look like. And so this would be the main sign along the west. Here it is, Olive Garden Italian Kitchen. And then there is a blade sign that would be on the west as well. And here it is to go. And then the third sign is going to be on the non-frontage north wall. And so the appellant is proposing 2 wall signs, 1 projecting sign, 2, the signs in total, the wall signs would have a total area of 108.24 square feet. And then that earning is based upon the 98 feet of building frontage along Southeast 14th. That's what they're proposing. They earn a total of 122. And then here is the monument sign that I mentioned. And generally, the code dictates that a monument sign can be located within 25 feet of the property line if it's 8 feet tall or less. So here are some details that the applicant had provided with regard to other signage in the area. And more of the sign details. And here is the applicant had requested that we show the landscape plan for the site, and that is this is from the actual site plan. And so you can see that it is a robust site. There's quite a bit of landscaping.
Frank, here's your mic on, I can't hear you.
Yeah, there we go.
There. And so there's quite a bit of landscaping that is being proposed. And then here are some vision clearance diagrams that the applicant had proposed showing where the monument sign would be. And so as staff, we look at the applicable criteria and determine if there is going to be any adverse impacts to the character of the area, and whether or not there's a reasonable, if it will have an impact on the essential character of the area, or if it will impact the health and welfare of occupants adjoining the property, as well as the remainder of the criteria. The staff had moved to, or had requested or recommended approval of the Type 2 zoning exceptions for the wall signs. Maximum 2 wall signs are in for the west frontage, so long as the signage shall be installed by a licensed sign contractor in accordance with sign permit issued by the city's Permit Development Center to a sign contractor licensed by the city. Staff is recommending approval of a Type 2 zoning exception for a monument sign that is 4 feet over the maximum allowed 8 feet in height, subject to the following conditions. Any monument sign that is over 8 feet in height shall be set back a minimum of 12.5 feet from the west property line. And this is similar to some of the questions that had come earlier today, where staff has this 50% policy where we look to look at the criteria, and if it's possible, we support up to 50%. After that, we believe that it should come back to it should be before the board to make a determination if they're willing to grant anything greater than that. So with the setback being 25 feet for a 12-foot sign, we looked at 50% being 12.5 feet. It's certainly within the purview if the board wishes to consider that condition to be any less than that as well. The final condition that staff had recommended would be, any signage shall be installed by a licensed sign contractor in accordance with sign permit issued by the City Permit and Development Center. And here's the map, or here's the consent map. And I will take it back up to the appeals. Are there any questions?
Just here. Frank, yeah, if you can go back to page 23 there.
Mhm.
So that's a monument sign, correct, right there? I'm wondering, is there a concern that if someone is driving out of that parking lot and trying to go left, going through, is there any obstruction issues that the city has with that monumental sign being there? I mean, that's an 8-foot tall sign, right? And it's right up against the
They're proposing a 12-foot sign?
12-foot sign, okay, but still, okay, so the 12-foot sign there, right in that intersection, is there any concern by the city of any obstruction there for traffic, cars going?
Well, as we look at the vision clearance triangles, it appears to meet those as it's positioned.
Yep.
I believe that the intersection, I do believe that there's lighting at the
Yes.
intersection
Okay,
as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good observation, though, on that, Justin. Related to that, Frank, so what the applicant is showing for where they want to place the sign would be allowable if it was an 8-foot sign, correct?
That is correct.
Which means that a monument sign can go right up against the right-of-way, the frontage right-of-way, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know why you guys ever allowed that. I think the city must have been thinking about the dense urban core. There's nothing that irritates me more than seeing a monument sign up against the sidewalk.
Right.
I just don't understand that. That said, if they want to have that sign there for some prominence, if you ask them to set it back 12 and a half feet, doesn't that put that so far back it's kind of on the back knob of that little grassy area?
Let me go to
Yeah, because,
another image real quick.
yeah, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot down to the nth degree, but just kind of for setting.
Let me pull up
Yeah,
their first drawing.
sure, thank you.
And so I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so we can see it
There we go.
a little
Yeah.
bit closer. And so if, with this dimension being shown as 19 feet, it seems like it would be put,
Okay.
back here somewhere, if
Got it.
if that is an accurate measure there.
Right,
So somewhere,
yeah.
well, actually, it would be more in alignment, probably.
Right, because our biggest issue is the east-west placement, not the north-south, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, I've got you. And it does look like, with this closer scale, unless I'm looking at a utility line, is the right-of-way the east edge of the sidewalk, or is there like another, where your cursor is that right-of-way there?
Yes, so
Okay.
this being the property line,
Okay.
it does look like there is
There is a gap.
maybe,
Okay.
maybe it's the width of the sidewalk.
Okay. Yeah, and we can ask the applicant a few things on that. But it's just good to see that a little closer. So with what's proposed on the building itself, you're okay with that? Okay. One related question I would have, and I don't want to do a Bill Gray here, our former chairman, but Bill Gray lived and worked everywhere in Des Moines. I kind of have too. I worked at Major Video in this shopping plaza. I'm not going to say what year, but the building was brand new, and Menards was where Aspen was. A number of us from the south side remember those days. And I remember a lot of that signage is still the way it was then. So the pole sign that would be at the far, maybe south end of this property, that's really tall. I don't know whose property that's on, but it has the big Aspen sign on top. Aspen's been empty 6 months. I remain confused on how our pole sign ordinance works on, quote, getting rid of unused pole signs. Is that in play here at all for any reasoning? And if it's appropriate for, yeah,
I do believe it's appropriate for
Okay.
our zoning enforcement officer
You bet.
to come and speak on.
he loves pole signs.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Eric Lundy, zoning enforcement officer.
Yep.
So the way this occurred, Olive Garden is going to be on a separate parcel. The overall owner has
Okay.
done a plat, and this is a separate parcel.
I understand.
That pole sign will be removed with the site plan, as part of the site plan approval of the Olive Garden restaurant.
Oh,
So
okay. All right.
Now,
Okay.
they still have the option of doing another freestanding monument sign
Sure.
further north because that old pole sign is a directory type sign
Right.
that advertises
Okay.
tenants, and I think they have some obligation to
Right.
provide tenant
Sure.
advertisement, but they still have the option to
Okay.
add another monument type sign on
Got
the frontage to the north of this.
But it sounds like all parties are addressing the pole sign and by however it's going to go away.
Correct. So
Okay.
the removal of that pole sign also allows them to have the sign they're proposing here,
Got
which
it.
is the monument sign.
Got it. Great. And thank you for working on that with all parties. So, excellent. Okay, that's the only questions I had. Anybody else have any further ones? Okay, all right. Frank, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, all right. Well, let's hear from the applicant. I can guess who that might be. Unless it's the Des Moines Police Department.
Well, so I did bring hard copies if anyone wanted one, if it'd be easier to look at the hard copy of the presentation.
Here we go. If we don't pass
Um,
it, no
so
more
I
free
can scroll through
benefits.
it, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, we can also pull it up over there.
Okay.
All you can eat.
They're gone. They're gone.
Keep one.
I do have an extra copy too, I just brought 5 up with me for the board. My name is Katie Peel, address is 6001 Nims Parkway, South Bend, Indiana, 46628. My name is Katie, good afternoon. I am here from Site Enhancement Services, representing Olive Garden for their signage at this new restaurant at 6157 Southeast 14th Street. Requesting additional signage that we feel will add to the property's overall value and also aid in additional safe wayfinding for future patrons. So in our zone, as Frank mentioned, we are well under our square footage allowed for our wall signs. We are just simply requesting an additional wall sign be placed on the north elevation. We want to take from the leftover square footage from the front, put it to the north elevation. Code does restrict that wall signs can only face a street. This technically does not face a street, a platted roadway, but it does face 2 of our major access points for the site, as shown on the screen currently with our traffic patterns. You can see in the yellow and the red, you have to go past our portion of the property to access the drive there. Coming south, you do have 2 options, but it is farther away. So that the left elevation, which faces north, does provide extra visibility to those motorists, which does provide them extra time to cross lanes, access safely to access the site, especially if they are interested in entering from that northern entrance there. Our request for the monument sign, as he mentioned, we are requesting an additional 4 feet over the required height or the allowed height. Let's scroll down to that. This request is 50% over what is allowed in overall height for code based on its setback. We do appreciate staff's recommendation of approval for the height, but like, as he said, there is a condition of the 12.5 feet setback. We would like to request that it stays in its currently proposed position. It is 25 feet setback from the curb line itself. So even though it is 0 feet on the property line, it is 25 feet from the curb line. As shown in the vision triangle exhibit, it does not impair any driver's line of sight, especially for other vehicles stopped at the intersection. Also, if we slid the monument back 12.5 feet, it actually would go right here where this dark arrow is at. And that is right in the middle of the landscaping that the owner of the entire development has proposed, in addition to a fence line, that will be stopping right there. So it would be right along the fence line as well.
Ooh. Okay.
Make sure I didn't miss anything. Another reason why we want to put that sign as close to the property line as possible at that height, if you are traveling northbound on 14th Street, there is a mattress firm that is just right below our property here. It does block the building by itself because the building is set back quite a ways. We are not placing signage on that elevation or in the rear, so having that sign out front does increase advance notice to motorists as they are traveling, and also just increase safer flow of traffic.
Okay.
That's mainly it.
All right, questions for Katie? Katie, were the site drawings prepared by your firm here then?
The entire package was, yes, by us. The site plan in front of you is actually one of the civils from the site itself. But yes, we
Okay.
put the package together.
Yeah, so with a fair degree of certainty, you are showing the property line, and that existing north-south sidewalk is a few feet west of the property line.
Correct.
yet, right? Okay.
Yes.
So if I just drove down the street, yeah, your sign's going to be setting back from the sidewalk
Correct.
a smidge, 3 feet, 5 feet, something like that,
Yes.
right? Okay. I think so. Cutting to the quick. And Katie, you mentioned a fence. Are we talking like an ornamental black wrought iron fence, or?
Yeah, so I'm not sure the exact details of it. It hasn't
Sure.
been totally approved yet.
Yeah.
It's looking at about maybe 3 to 4 feet in
Okay.
height. It is decorative in nature.
That's the purpose, yeah. It's not a security fence, chain
No,
link,
and there
barbed
are
wire.
these little asterisks that are shown. They're kind of look like little flowers or stars. They're actually different branches of the decorative fence that will
Right.
be installed along the line there.
Right, so it's a decorative fence.
Yes.
Okay. All right, easy enough. Right.
You gotta protect the breadsticks. Gotta protect them.
Okay, other questions for Katie?
Chair?
Yes.
Katie, could you show us again where, if you had to set it back 12 feet, what in proximity would that be then?
Yep. So the length of the sign in general is about 12 feet. So we kind of
Okay.
can just use this as a reference point here. So
Yep.
if it's slid over completely, it actually kind of be towards the back end of that landscaping, but right in the middle of it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, they can't do that, but
And Katie, you work for the development company, not the franchise owner of the restaurant? Is that- or-
we work for Darden is the owner of the brand itself. We are a third party that works for them. We're their signage consultants.
Right, okay, I got you. I was just curious if you've been involved in some of their other locations here in Iowa or Des Moines?
Not in Iowa, but we
Okay.
are,
You
we
got the
work
West
with
Des Moines, yeah.
their locations nationwide.
Okay, gotcha. Other questions for Katie? Okay.
Question for legal counsel. Right of way goes all the way to the sidewalk? City right of way is all the way to the city sidewalk? What?
Typically, it's able to be to the back of the site.
Back of the sidewalk?
Right.
Okay.
But in this case, keep in mind, we have DOT right-of-way. This is US Highway 65.
No, I understand that.
Yeah. So this, I would think in a plat or residential that, the backside of the sidewalk is where I start, right? But yeah.
If possible, I'd also like to
Yeah,
add,
sure.
we're also, so we wanted to propose a monument sign because it is code compliant as of now. We were originally promised a panel on that existing freestanding sign, which now that the entire development is being replatted, it does have to go down because it's not conforming. So we lose a little bit of our advertisement there. There's a big billboard there as well, which we were promised a little bit of display time on, which is not going to happen either. So we're really kind of banking on this monument side just to give us the increased visibility that we need. As some of the pictures show, if you're familiar with the area, most of the other signs in the area are pole signs. So your eyes are kind of naturally gravitate up. So we're just trying to kind of come in line with that without being too flashy.
Okay. Anything else for Katie? All right. Okay, all right. Katie, you can sit down for a minute. We'll
Thank
check back with you here. We still have a lot of people in the audience. So, is there anybody that wants to speak in support of the applicant? Anybody speak in opposition? Anybody neutral? Seeing none, any further questions for staff? I don't see any. So, Katie, Katie, you've seen how this works, unless you want to say anything else since you walked back. All right, we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. All right, folks, we're all family here, so what do you think? It's a big joke in there. Yeah, yep. Well, and for me, clarification of where the right-of-way, where those setbacks would begin, that was very helpful. Other thoughts? Be a huge improvement in this corridor, I can tell you that. This area is, 40-plus years old for this development now. Some of this stuff goes back 75 years. There's been plenty of improvements on the Southeast 14th corridor, but we need more. And I think an investment of this scale says something. I know that I really like a lot of local restaurants, especially local Italian restaurants. But at the same time, I think that what this would bring, including probably the branding, says something else. It says that the Southridge area remains a destination, which is how this area had been developed. So I think Katie kind of references, to paraphrase her, they've tried to make everything fit, work as best they can, but still they need this to work for them too, for what they're investing here. I feel it's reasonable.
I'm still trying to figure out if that was set back 12, I don't see how detrimental that would be. Are they saying that it's going to conflict with the ornamental fence there, or bushes, or, I mean, is that kind of what they're saying, that it would happen? It looks like that's where it starts, really. So
Yeah, I pondered that a little. I mean, you could design your landscaping so you have a little on the other side.
Yeah.
Maybe they could set it back 6 feet, maybe not 12, split in the middle.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah.
the city has, they've recommended that as part of this, in agreement with.
Sure.
I have no problem with the wall signs. This is just the one issue that is kind of a sticking point. I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with it personally, so.
What if they set it back, let's say, another 6 feet or so? Then it'd probably be, like split the difference.
Yeah.
Quid pro quo, meet in the middle. Just discussion here.
Yep.
To see. And certainly people could advocate that, it's going to block everything, but there's actually a pretty long right-of-way in there. It's a pretty wide ditch to be able to see what's coming up. Yeah, I would think another 6 feet wouldn't put it where the sign's back so far that no one can see it. It would still be in front of the front parking curb for the, if you look at the parking lot, it'd still be in front of the bump out there.
And it's still a 12-foot sign, I mean, right?
Right. Yeah, because it's normally supposed to only be 8 foot, so you could look at that as, hey, if you want a little taller, let's push it back a smidge.
Yeah.
The traffic travels fairly fast on this road, too.
This is true. People travel too fast.
Yeah, and that's why I have some of those concerns.
It's a highway in a city, yeah.
Being able to see into the right-of-way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, with the applicant proposal, and again, I appreciate what Katie said about, it's like 25 feet back from the curb, if I've got that right. Of course, we never use from the curb as a true point of compliance, because that's not how the zoning ordinance works. It's right-of-way and setbacks from right-of-way. But in practicality, it's 25 feet back from a curb line, the way they proposed it. It sounds like if, that everybody's okay with the exceptions on the building, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Gary, I'll put you on the spot. Would it be possible we could maybe get some easy lifting out of the way and have a motion to approve a portion of this, just in our own minds, like the building signage, and then address the monument sign as a second motion, one way or the other? I mean, we could probably do it all together, saying, we want to grant this, but not that, or we want to grant this, but this with this condition. We can always do that. I think the board can handle that. But I was just curious if that might be an option to If the board doesn't care, it doesn't matter to me.
I think it's
Wait.
probably preferable to have it as one vote since it's
Yeah.
one application.
Gotcha. That's fine. So, suggestion to members then, I think everybody feels like the building's pretty cool. We could maybe have somebody grant a motion for the exceptions related to the building signage and then what they want to propose on the monument sign. Because if that motion would fail as one thing, we could bring another motion back. Because what I don't want to do is leave the building signage hanging, so that it dies on the vine per se. Not a pun intended. Okay. Mhm. Okay. No, I got it. Okay, so we got a motion and a second, but before we vote, and Katie, this can't be super official, you can't really say anything, but if we just had you set the monument sign back 6 feet, do you think you could still make your project work? Okay. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of granting the requested exceptions subject to the proposed conditions, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Tom, was that up in the air? Okay, all right, so it's 5-0. So, yeah, so we passed it, but you've got to set the monument sign back just 6 feet from the right-of-way, not the 12.5 that the city wants. All right, great. Well, thanks for your travels over here today. We wish you a safe trip home. Okay, so that concludes, I believe, our agenda items for
Katie.
decision. I think we have a little business to do.
Katie, do you need these back?
No, they're.
Yep, those are for our record. Yeah, yeah. You can show all your friends now.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me all yours if you don't want to take them. I'll put them in Bill Gray's car tonight.
So Frank, let's see, I know we have a couple business things. The first one would be, yes, approval of minutes from the March 23rd meeting. If you were here on March 23rd, if you saw any changes needed, please note. If not, would there be a motion to grant approval of the minutes? And I'll second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Good job, Tom. All right, motion carries 5-0. Minutes are approved for March. Now we have to elect officers. So much like the Iowa caucuses, this is your time to lobby for anyone, and then we'll see who it is. But we usually nominate, we have a vice chair, and we have a chair. You don't have to be present to win. Is that correct? Yeah. I'd say let's start off with our vice chair. Would there be any, if somebody wants to volunteer, that's always the best way to get a nomination going. Or does somebody want to nominate someone? All right, there's a motion to nominate Nathan.
$4,400.
And I don't know if we have to second those, at least on nominating slate. Great. Are there any other nominations?
Right, and the cable's right on the top line.
Yeah. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right. If there are none, and working Tom DeCio into the mix.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. So, Tom, we have a nomination of Nathan Blake to be vice chair. Before we vote on that, would there be any other individuals nominated for vice chair? If none, we'll take a vote. Nathan for vice chair. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. It's just great when people aren't here, they get voted into stuff. This is how neighborhood leadership works at its best, too. Okay. Yeah, yes. Congratulations, Nathan. Okay, now, so for chairman, any nominations for chair?
I nominate Mel Pins.
I don't know about that. Are there? All right. So motion second, even, that's nice. Any other nominations for chair, which I would happily consider? All right, seeing none, slate closed. All those in favor, say aye. You know, it only takes 4 to carry, so I'm going to abstain from voting. All right, so I look forward to continuing to work with a great bunch of people, excellent city staff. So Gary, welcome aboard. So with that said, okay, officers have been elected. Any other business?
That's the business.
Okay, all right, well, that concludes this monthly hearing of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. All right.